What is up? And welcome back to the Gamecocks Football Captain's Log, sponsored by Morris Island Charters, where we as Gamecock football fans discuss the previous week's Gamecocks game and preview the upcoming one. And by we, I mean that I am joined by the captain of Morris Island Charters, P.D. Anabonet. Captain P.D., how are you doing?
Doing good. How about you?
Fantastic. A big reason for that, last Saturday, a 47-6 win against Vandy, an impressive showing despite the weather being terrible. What are your general thoughts on how we looked?
General thoughts is we looked good, but how much of that is just Vandy being a very terrible team? I can't really get any kind of litmus test on either side of the ball because Vandy just looked absolutely terrible. They held with us, in the first half. It was a 13-0, I think at halftime. So we struggled a little bit in the first half on offense, just not getting the ball in the right places and a couple of drops and just things here and there that killed drives. But fortunately for us, the defense was able to, not allow them to really do anything on offense, allow Vandy to do anything on offense. And we switched it up with the 3-3-5 and started getting pressure off the ends. And that really worked out well for us. So, good showing for us, but how good really was it? It's hard to tell because Vanderbilt looked like they weren't even ready to play in the second half, especially.
Yeah, we did hold them to 234 yards of total offense, and we forced 2 turnovers and got a blocked punt return for a touchdown. A couple of guys I want to highlight on defense: Debo Williams, another 11-tackle game, and Bam Martin Scott, 13 tackles and a sack. So, like you said, impressive showing on defense. Offense, that's kind of where I want to focus a little bit because the numbers are good. I mean, 9 carries, 100 yards, and a touchdown from Mario Anderson, who's insane. Rattler had another 350 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Got the good receivers in Leggett, who, despite looking not 100%, another 100-yard day. And then the Joshua Simon revelation. Did it feel like to you that kind of opened up the intermediate playbook for us?
It's hard to tell whether or not if it's a result of Simon being in the game or just that we actually started calling intermediate routes because I have not seen them even in the play pattern in previous weeks. But yes, for sure, we started throwing the ball to other places except for 25 yards down the field or to screen passes. So I want to see more of that for sure because that opens up everything else when you're not throwing to the same 2 people, every play. But as far as offense goes, it was a little sloppy. Rattler, I don't know if it's because of the weather or whatnot, but a little inaccurate, a couple drop balls. Offensive line did pretty well. Not like they had a lot of competition to go up against, but can't really complain. We just basically dominated them up front as well we should have, and let us get into more of a rhythm as far as getting the ball out and into the right spots, basically.
Yeah, you mentioned Rattler. Again, he had a huge day passing it as he has so many times this season. But, yeah, it looks like he's underthrowing a lot of his balls.
Yeah. I mean, I know the ball is being wet. It's going to be a little heavier, but, they get dry balls in there fairly often with, to make sure that that's not a thing. So it's hard. He had the same problem last week too, though. So it's kind of hard to see if if this was just a bad weather game, or is it a trend that seems to be coming up with him just not having the placement that he was at the earlier in the season. I think we're going to need it to be more accurate this week, though, because Vanderbilt was not in any way equipped to handle our receivers as far as covering them.
Yeah. And, I don't want to sound like we are unimpressed with the Vandy win, because we're not. I mean, you have to, when you have a team who you're that much better than, you better blow them out. And we blew them out.
Yes.
And so, credit to everyone on the staff and the players as well, who we've been critical of. We're mostly critical of the staff, honestly. But you got the guys ready to play. They took advantage of a team who wasn't as good, and they blew them out. And you really needed that, especially going into these final 2 games. So if you're ready, I'd like to move on to Kentucky, because this is a big one.
Sure.
All right. Saturday, 7:30 SEC Network, also at Williams-Brice Stadium, where you'll be able to find us, because we're going to be there. As of right now, we are a 2-point underdog. Kentucky is 6-4, 3-4 in the SEC. They've lost 4 of their last 5 and were blown out last week against Bama. What do we need to do to be successful against this team? Because I have some thoughts.
Okay. So basically, just carrying over from last week a little bit, defense played well. The best we've seen them play all year. And we went to this 3-3-5 defense and disguised our coverage a little better, got more pressure off the ends. That's all well and good for Vanderbilt. Kentucky is not a fantastic team, but they're not a bad team either. They're going to be physical up front. And being on the 3-3-5, I don't know how well it's going to hold up against that offensive line, if they'll be able to push us around and get holes easily. But the alternative is to go back to what we were doing, which was not working at all.
Yes.
So obviously we have to stay with what's working. This is going to be a very tight game, in my opinion. It's going to depend on, can we get turnovers? Can we make plays on special teams to make up for that lack of upfront size on the defensive line and linebackers position? So I don't think Kentucky wants to throw the ball, especially after how their quarterback's been playing. So if they can run it against us, they're going to do that. Stoops is kind of like a ground and pound kind of guy. So that's if he can do it, that's what he'll do. And I don't know that we can stop that, but if we can slow him down, create turnovers, and outscore them on offense, tell you what, we've got a shot. So this is one of those games we have to win, though.
So this is something, as I was getting into my stat nerd psyche and digging into the numbers, I found some things about Kentucky where I know we've been a little down this season for good reason. But I found some things that gave me a great deal of optimism. And now I'm full of hope. I'm going to tell you why. So defensively, they have taken a pretty significant step back. They've only returned 5 starters on defense each of the last 3 seasons. So 2021, 2022, they did the same thing, and they were able to work through it pretty well. This year, the wheels have kind of fallen off. A big reason for that, they lost 3 starters in their secondary. So according to ESPN.com, they gave up 173 yards passing per game last year. This year, that's up to 241, which plays right into a strength of ours. Also, they do hold teams to fewer rushing yards this season, but I think that has a lot more to do with teams are like, we don't have to run the ball against them. We can throw it because they've been so terrible. And that's not really something we look to do. We've been kind of holding together our rushing offense with duct tape and Mario Anderson, who's been fantastic. But the fact that that plays into a strength, their defensive weakness plays into a strength of ours and has caused their their defense to go from allowing just 19 points a game last year to 25 points a game this year. I'm optimistic about that. Am I crazy for being optimistic about that?
No, you're not crazy. I mean, that makes, total sense. If teams can throw the ball against them and it works, why not keep doing it? And honestly, that's probably what we would have to do regardless, because we can't seem to run the ball anyways. I would like to see us get the ball in Mario's hands in any way possible, because he just makes things happen. Kentucky being beat up and giving up a lot of points of the air, that's great. I'm hoping that Spencer does not continue this inaccuracy problem. So if that is an issue, we might be doomed. But Kentucky's a very beatable team. Can our offensive line hold up against them? Their defensive line. We seem to be better at pass blocking than we are run blocking. Can we make this can we make that kind of our advantage as far as getting the ball downfield? But can we continue this intermediary, these routes? Not trying to make a huge play all the time. Let's just move the ball consistently down the field, and then that opens other things up. Basically, using that the 5-10 yard routes as like your running game, instead of having to hand it to Mario. Hit him out of the backfield, not in a screenplay, but just get him out of the flats somewhere. This can, being a night game, excuse me, in Williams-Brice, this could be something that we could possibly run away with if the situation presents itself. But there's a lot of ifs and what's to go on in this game that we're just going to have to see what happens.
All right. So they say a rising tide lifts all boats. Do I have that quote correct?
That is true. Yes.
Okay. So we're going to see if my rising tide of optimism can continue to lift your boat to match my optimism. I've got offensive stats now as well. Oh. You talked about North Carolina State transfer Devin Leary, who's been incredibly inconsistent this year. He makes 2022 Will Levis look like 2021 Will Levis. Now, he has gotten a little bit more comfortable as the season has gone on, but he's not someone who would really scare me if we weren't the defense that made Graham Mertz look like Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Now, the big issue that I found with Kentucky's offense, you mentioned Stoops, he wants to run the ball. They have not really come close to replacing the consistent production of Chris Rodriguez. They got Ray Davis, incredibly talented back. If you take away that monster 280-yard game he had against Florida, he's averaging 72 yards per game, including just 49 over his last 3. For context, since he started getting regular carries, Mario Anderson is averaging 86 yards per game. Where's your boat in the optimism tide after hearing that?
So it's hard to say really what's going to happen with this. If we continue with the three-man front, I think we're going to have to bring linebackers to get to up towards the line and make it look more like a 5-man front. But how well do we disguise it is going to be a thing. Can we get Can we get guys into the holes or into the gaps and get into the backfield like we were doing against Vanderbilt? It's kind of like a toss-up. That's going to be the pivotal point there is, do we get pressure in the backfield consistently without having to give it too much on the DBs to try and make them have to get in situations where you have to throw the ball, and then being able to get to him fast enough on those pass plays to get pressure on Larry, have him get the ball out fast to his receivers. Because if we have guys that have to cover for more than 3 or 4 seconds, those guys are going to get over it.
Big problem.
It's been our Achilles heel all year. Can we make this 3-man front work is going to be the super question of this game.
How much does this feel like a replay of that Florida game? Like transfer quarterback who's been meh, running game that you're more concerned about, kind of matches up like a lot of similar overlap and weaknesses between the two teams. How much does it remind you of that game?
I mean, it reminds me a lot. We weren't running the 3-man front on defense at the time, but obviously, geez, we were just so terrible. We
oh my gosh. We were in the building for that one as well. Like it kind of is like a Groundhog's Day of that game, except to their credit, like we switched to that 3-man front, like you're saying. We're coming off a game where the offensive play calling was a little bit more varied than we've seen. Yeah. So now it's like, how much do those adjustments matter is kind of what it feels like to me.
Yeah. And we've got a lot of confidence coming off of that game. We got a lot of guys in last week in Vanderbilt where, get some guys that experience that don't normally play. We need to be less confused as we looked against Florida. Yeah. And I think we're getting to that point in the year where we've gone through 10 games now where we got a better sense of who is who and what they can do, and be a little better, be in the better spots, basically. We're also better at confusing the quarterback and hiding our coverages. And I think earlier on in the year they were confusing the quarterback because we were not lined up where we were supposed to be to begin with, and we were lost. But it's getting better. This week will be a lot more of a test. So it's so hard to be optimistic about this team, because as soon as you think something is trending in the right direction, you get the rug pulled right under you and you just fall, face plant into the mud puddle. So it's hard to say. It's really hard to say.
Well, let's put our Dolphins where our mouths are and talk about the optimism tide. We've peaked. Wherever you are with that, okay, we're about to find out. Entertainment purposes, 2-point underdog. Where are you putting your Dolphins?
So it's really confusing as far as that 2-point underdog. I mean, I looked at ESPN and said, Kentucky's favorite by 2, but then they also said we had like a 59% chance to win the game. So that makes perfect sense, ESPN. I would, being at home, we've got Darude coming to town, so Sandstorm is going to be kicking in Willie B. I like us to win by 3. So let's put your entertainment purposes on the Gamecocks.
I have to agree. You mentioned a must-win game. This almost feels like a should-win game to me. Like you said, night game, Willie B, Sandstorm concert pregame. We're going to be in the building. We're fighting to be bowl eligible. We're facing a team that's already bowl eligible, so they don't have that to play for. They've coming in.
All their fight for titles and all that kind of stuff. They've already got their bowl game. There's nothing really for them to fight for other than just a W.
Yep, they're coming in losing 4 or 5, getting blown out last week. We're kind of on a different trajectory, coming in winning 2 in a row, including a blowout last week. Based on what we've been sold with Beamer being a family guy, a intangibles guy, if he can't get this group, both the players and the coaches, on the same page and ready to win this game, to me, that's a bigger indictment of the staff than blowing that Florida game.
Yes. What we have to do this game is just be like, we have to show that we came out ready to play and make this a fight. If we come out and just get destroyed, I think a clear house. Just
something's got to happen. Right?
Yeah, everybody's got. If Beamer might be the only one standing at the end of the day, if we cannot come out and look like we are the team to beat in this game, because Kentucky's not that good. I think they're probably talent-wise maybe a little bit better than us, but in all the situations we should win this game, or at least be in it to the wire. One thing I'm concerned about is I pray to God that nothing happens to Mario Anderson, because we don't have any other running backs to put back there.
Yeah, we kind of found that out last week. Yeah, as they were mixing guys in, and then you get Juju hurt and Dak hurt. But I do think like the Rattler toss up, you might lean Kentucky at running back, but then like Leggett, even with the injury, those guys are more skilled than what Kentucky has to offer. But you're right, everywhere else, I don't know. But you got all these different things working in your favor. So if you're the intangibles coach, you got to use that and go out and win this game, in my opinion.
Yeah. And congratulations to Xavier Leggett for being the 5th player in school history to go over 1,000 yards in a season. So
imagine if he'd been fully healthy the full year. Yeah, there were a couple games there where you couldn't do anything with him. He was so hurt, and still over 1,000. That's insane.
Yeah.
And
he's still the main guy we throw to anyway. So if he's hurt or not. So he is the weapon.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. This is going to be a bad show if we lose this game. I will tell you that right now.
Yeah.
The optimism tide, if it goes down and there's a bunch of there's no water left, just dead coral reef and octopi, it's going to be a bad show. You don't want to see that, Shane Beamer.
We have to win this game, so we have some confidence coming into next week.
Yes. So, well, did we cover it all?
I think so.
Damn it, we covered it all. If you're out there and you see us, give us cash or liquor. If you wanted a boat tour with the captain himself, check the show notes. Other than that, we will catch you next week.
Bye-bye.